Okay, so lots of intense stuff between Catherine and Heathcliff. Um,
Yeah,
I guess my big question is one interpretation of this is that these are just crazy, sick, messed up people. Another
yeah.
is that, well, yeah, maybe that's that. We'll go to that in a minute. But another is that somehow it's romantic and somehow we're supposed to find something about it appealing. So are you totally on the, it's just crazy sick? Or is there something, is there something about their romance that's positive?
I don't think it's positive. I think that's a not a great word to use in this situation because there's so much abuse and um, weird actions. I don't know how else to say it between, especially Heathcliff. Um, I think that if you read it in a certain way, their undying love, whatever, could be romantic. But I think the way it's portrayed and their actions take it to a creepier, less wholesome level.
Less wholesome is understatement of the year. Uh, yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
fair to say it's hard to find anything wholesome about it.
yeah.
Um, so kind of, I always have Jane Eyre in comparison. And so um, what do you think Emily Bronte is doing here? Do you think that I mean, clearly her sister has this, romantic love story and whatever you think about, you know, those two in that one. This is just so much more twisted. Do you think she's trying to kind of trash romantic love or take it? Why would she write a story like this? Is what I keep coming back to. Does she just have, yeah, is it just for drama or what is she trying to tell us here by showing us this to us?
Well, it's certainly different than most love stories, and most of the time, I think that's the point. It's so much different than anything else I've heard of or read, which makes it interesting. And I want to know what happens, and I want to try and understand why they act like this.
Okay, fair enough. There is part of me that wonders if, 19th century is sort of the height of love stories, and maybe some 20th century, but are love stories, and I don't keep up with popular culture today or contemporary culture, or certainly not contemporary fantasy. Would you say love stories are as popular as ever, or in your experience, or not at all, or what's what's the status of love stories these days?
Well, first of all, it does seem like there's a lot of love stories in the 19th century, but um, actually, recently I've read and have been looking up a lot of love stories and romantic stories. Especially I've been recommended a bunch by a bunch of my peers, and I haven't read them all yet, but I know there is a lot. I'm not too sure compared to other genres how big it is, but it's not dead for sure.
And thank you. And do you have a sense? Have you read? There's sort of, like we've mentioned rom-coms, and even if you don't watch very many rom-coms, Jane Austen is sort of one version, and then there are modern versions, but it's sort of light and positive and maybe a little bit humorous. Then, Jane Eyre with Mr. Rochester and all is kind of almost deathly serious, but it's still a love story. And this is, again, the sick and twisted love story. So do you get the sense from what you've been exposed to? Is it more kind of the light and airy and positive version of love? Or is it kind of deathly serious as in Jane Eyre? Or is it kind of sick and twisted like this?
Do you mean the books now or
Yeah,
the
whatever,
books?
what have you've been exposed to more recently? Which kind of love
Um,
story is it?
Mostly light and airy, and I mean, obviously, there's a different general setting overall because it's set in modern times and not back then. It I feel like that makes a big difference, but the ones I've read so far are more light and airy. I know there's got to be lots where it's like more dark and
Hmm.
um, different characters. So
Well, it makes sense.
yeah.
Well, and I would say one thing about the Bronte sisters as compared just to Jane Austen or rom-coms is that it doesn't feel like there's the intensity. I feel as if Jane Austen's characters, yeah, they fall in love and get married at the end, but it feels like both of the Bronte sisters is just like this intensity. Um, does that intensity feel kind of old-fashioned and outdated, or could you imagine kind of dark or light, that level of intensity still making sense today?
I think, okay, first of all, I agree that there is a different kind of intensity um, in the sisters' writings, and I think that it's definitely possible.
Hmm.
And I'm sure there are books with the same intensity today. I just haven't read them.
So
I think
you think what?
I think it's, I think the things that contribute to that intensity are the characters' connections and the writing style, honestly.
Hmm.
Because I recently read a book that was like a romance novel,
Hmm.
except the writing was not well laid out and didn't really connect, and that made it seem kind of fake. So I
Hmm.
feel like a lot of it is your writing.
Got it.
Yeah.
A different sort of thing, but I assume you at least know the story of Romeo and Juliet.
Yes. Yeah, I do.
Have you kind of read it or watched a movie or anything? Are you basically familiar with it?
I think a long time ago, I read one of those watered down kid versions, and maybe watched a movie, but I haven't visited it in a little while.
So just spoiler alert, since you already, teenagers fall in love, their parents don't approve, they kill it themselves. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but going back to the intensity thing, one interpretation is that human nature is human nature, and that some people in all eras have had this sort of level of crazy intensity in love. A different interpretation as well. Some people at some places and cultures and whatever had that intensity, but that intensity is only part of certain cultures. Would your guess being that that sort of intensity could happen to anybody in any culture at any point in history, or do you think there are some places where maybe it's more likely?
Um, I could see it, that kind of connection between people being able to happen in or everywhere.
Mhm.
Um, I know that being raised in different cultures and areas and with different customs might affect that a little bit, but I mean, this is only from watching movies and reading books, but it always seems like there's an outlier,
Mhm.
um, and that's what gets put into novels. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think so.
Yeah, no,
But
you're right. Of course, it's in the novel because it's extreme. On the other hand, I don't watch, very many sort of teenage movies, but every once in a while I do, every 3 or 4 years. And my sense is that most teenage movies are not about this level of intensity. I can imagine, a couple breaking up and being depressed and everything, but this feels certainly Wuthering Heights feels like a whole different level. Does that seem
yeah,
accurate?
yeah, for most movies, I think that's true for sure.
And then what I wonder too is, I think I read just a very superficial, maybe just a paragraph or two about the film, the Wuthering Heights film. Personally, I'm deliberately staying away from either watching the movie or seeing or even reading reviews until after I finish the book this time through, because I always like to come with a fresh judgment. But, and are you the same? You haven't watched the movie or read reviews of it or anything?
No, I'm planning to wait until after we're done.
Exactly. I'm sure the same reason. It's always better. So,
Yeah.
but if you had to guess, do you think the movie will, how do you think the movie will handle this? Do you think the movie will kind of keep the intensity, or do they have to, in order to make it make sense to modern audiences, do you think the movie will have to change it somehow for modern audiences?
I think it'll definitely change. I'm not sure how much. I think it's probably not going to be as, mm, I, I just feel like you're not going to get the same sense of psychological trauma and abuse in the movie as you are in the book. Part of that's because of the audience. Maybe it's hard to replicate. Just as an example, I've listened to one of the Game of Thrones prequels. It's called
Mhm.
Fire and Blood, and it details a lot of stuff. And part of that story is the House of Dragon show that's
Mhm.
being released right now. And I did notice that they changed a lot of things.
Mhm.
And it's not exactly the same story, but there is like intensity and lots of levels, and they
Mhm.
changed a lot. So I feel like there's going to be differences.
Well, and part of this is books, allow you to get inside a character's head. And I think I find books usually more psychologically intense because you're more inside the characters' heads, whereas movies, you're looking at them. So I think, yeah, there's just internal experience that's, I think, usually more intense with books. If you were to direct this, suppose you're a movie director and somebody said, okay, Alana, you get to direct Wuthering Heights. How would you try to convey, and obviously there's a big assignment. I don't expect you in 30 seconds, but how would you try to convey the kind of essence of the book for a modern audience in a film?
Okay. Um, One of the things I think about is setting, like making it moody and dark and grimy, especially in the Wuthering Heights household. And maybe in the beginning of the flashback where everything's kind of happy, I'd like exaggerate that happiness and then exaggerate the opposite feelings later on.
Hmm.
That would probably help. I can't really say anything on the acting because I know nothing about acting,
Hmm.
but those are the two things I thought of right
Well,
away.
it's certainly the setting, I think, would be the easiest piece to convey. And I think actually that's something that visuals might be even more powerful because I'm imagining all of this stuff. But yeah, actually, and I expect, I would predict you're probably right in the sense that I expect the movie will probably be visually stimulating and dramatic, just as you project. But yeah, how to get inside these people's heads. So why does Catherine not simply hate Heathcliff? Doesn't she have abundant reasons simply to hate him? Why does she not just hate him?
You know what? I don't really know. If I were her, I would be a little weirded out. But there's love, and they have a deep history. They were besties and soulmates or whatever in the beginning with flashback, and now there's a bunch of anger and stuff. But I feel like the connection they had is so big and wide that the anger can't bridge it. I don't know, something like that.
I guess that does seem like a reasonable attempt. It makes me wonder. It does actually make me wonder how their connection as kids could have been so intense, or so close, because it seems so weird later on. Why would it have stuck? Is the question I'm left with.
And I think, as I recall, Heathcliff was either taken in or
Yeah,
not
yeah,
of the same family. So I
yeah.
think being or maybe feeling like siblings, but not actually siblings.
Hmm.
And then that turned into something more. But I don't know. I feel like they just really cared for each other in the beginning.
Hmm.
And even though things happened, maybe those feelings didn't go away fully.
How about, here's a hypothesis. How about she feels guilty or because they had such a, going with your first suggestion, they had such a connection. But I can imagine two different reasons she feels guilty. One is she was kind of raised, I think she was like 12 or something, and she was raised into kind of the upper class. They were kids, then she was raised up, and then they didn't have the same connection. And then later
Yeah,
on, she marries old what's his name, and which is kind of deliberate betrayal in some ways of Heathcliff. So what if what do you think of the hypothesis that they did have this close connection as kids? Then she feels guilty for betraying him twice in those respects. The first one, it wasn't totally in her control, but still kind of a betrayal. And because of guilt, that's why she forgives him for being such a horrible person.
that's a good point. I didn't think about that. But yes, I totally agree.
Okay, well, it's a hypothesis. I'm not claiming it's true. I'm just trying to make sense of the craziness of the situation. And
Yeah,
going back to if they had such a bond, maybe she forgives him because she empathetically sees how much he suffered and how unjust his situation was. Um, Seems plausible?
yeah, I think so for sure.
Okay. Well, we will figure out what to read for next time. Uh, and anything else from you on Wuthering Heights so far?
Um, Not too important, but I thought that it was weird how Heathcliff um, decided that he was going to torture Hindley's son. That was kind of mean, but that's okay.
Kind of mean. It's horrible. Way worse than kind of mean.
Yeah,
Just horrible. That's what I mean. What's weird about this is it seems like we're watching this super horrible person and still, and this is maybe part of it because Catherine has a little place in her heart for Heathcliff, a little place, she wants to,
It's a place.
yeah, she's totally in love with him, and he's a horrible person. And so maybe, yeah, it's so, in some ways, it feels as if the author is kind of messing with our hearts a little bit by not having us hate Heathcliff quite as much as we should. Does that seem right
Yeah,
or not?
that's a good point. Yeah, it's like plot armor kind of again. You want to like him, but he's a bad person.
Exactly,
Not really
exactly.
plot armor, plot
Yeah,
feelings.
yeah. No, I get why you use plot armor, but you're correct. That's not quite correct. So we need to come
Yeah,
up character armor. What if we called it character armor?
protagonist armor.
Yeah, evil
Not
protagonist
really.
armor,
No, not
for
really.
example.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, but I get where you're going. I get where you're going. So excellent. Super interesting, Alana. Have a great flight back, and I look forward to next time. Take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye bye.